And welcome to the February 1st, 2022 Public Works Committee meeting. Now is time for a roll call and determination of quorum.
Evans. Stroman.
Here.
Roberts.
Here.
Jones.
Here.
Armstrong.
Here.
A quorum is present.
Thank you so much. Now is time for the adoption of the agenda.
Move approval.
We have a motion by Councilman Jones, a second by Councilman Stroman. All in favor? Aye. Motion passes. Now is time for general public comment. This is a time for members of the public to discuss or express concerns to the committee on any issue not limited to items on the agenda. Action will not be taken at the meeting on any issue not on the agenda except by placement on the agenda by unanimous vote of the council members present. And we do have one general public comment, and it is from, I think it's Annie and Brad. Herb, if you'd come forward, you can speak on it. Give us your name and address, if you would, before you speak.
Hi, my name is Ann Herb. I'm here with my husband Brad, and we live at 601 Southbury Pine Road. And we're here today to just maybe see what additional information or help we can find for our sewer connection issue that we're having. When we purchased the house 4 years ago, we knew that eventually we were going to need to connect to city sewer. We've been working on plans since May of 2021. We've been working with the city. We went ahead and contracted with KTM and got the engineering portion done. We also had to replat our lots, so we didn't have any issues there. So currently we're about $12,000 into plans. We were told to expect the project to cost about $40,000, which at the time that's a large amount to consider, but it's what we needed to do to go forward. Since then, the first bid just for the excavation came in at $83,000. The second bid has come in at $100,000. So it's disappointing to think that we are limited in being able to improve upon our home. Every contractor, Bill Wilkening, had provided us a list of contractors. We went ahead and I called all 63 of them listed. 4 of them were interested. I've received 2 bids, and I've received an additional one verbally, and that one was a little bit more in range at $60,000. Every contractor that has looked at this project has thought that the city needs to have some involvement. So that's what we would like to see. Part of this plan is they're not just allowing us to connect to the existing manhole. We have to place an additional manhole at the edge of our property with a stub out so the neighbors can connect if they choose to. So it's just seeming to be, it's going to be cost prohibitive for us. Part of our plan was to build an addition for my parents to come live in their retirement. So it is a little emotional when you think that this just might be halted because of not being able to connect to city sewer. So if the city is unable to help, or if there's some loophole or something, or if we can get an exemption and connect to or remain on septic.
Does anyone on the committee have any questions for?
Well, I'd like to find out from our engineer or you guys exactly why this is going to cost so much. I'm trying to look for the map here. I don't find it in my stuff, but is it under a certain item?
Yeah.
What they're saying, the reason why it costs so much is we have to do a sewer main extension of 108 feet. The connection point, I was told we're no longer allowed to connect to due to the age of the pipe in that area. And so we have to actually create a new sewer main extension, which is where the exorbitant cost comes from. It's not the initial, I guess the normal tap fee is $400, but because we have to provide our own sewer to that point is why it's such at the extent that it is. And then we had to do a lot line consolidation because the property sits on, or was sitting on 4 lots. that had never been platted except since the 40s. And then when we buy the place, they made us plat it into one because the sewer would run across one of those lot lines. So there's an additional cost that was associated with that as well.
Mr. Ganji, is that are you familiar with all the details? And is there any way we could possibly connect to the old sewer by making some adjustments or some way, if that's going to save an appreciable amount of money? Is that true, if it were possible?
They would save most of the expense, the way I understand it. We're connecting to the Edgewood district. We live on Southbury Pine, which is just to the west of where that is, but they require a 108-foot extension.
Well, I kind of grew up right there. I'm trying to think which house you would be in, so.
The brick one.
Who's your next door neighbor?
Benusis.
Okay,
or-
I know which house it is. That's Yeoman's house from way back, so, and then they moved up the street, so.
I'm not familiar with any of the details of this project or that you're talking about, but I'd love to sit down and kind of go over some of these costs and the details with you to see if there's anything that we can do to work with this and, explain some of these things further. I would be more than happy to do that.
Sounds great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Jones?
Thank you, Chairman. Folks, if may I ask a question of you while you're still here? So you said at the beginning of your presentation to us that you were aware that you had to connect to sewer, right?
When we initially bought the location 4+ years ago, we were aware it was on a septic system. And before we purchased it, we contacted the city to see what would be required to get on city sewer, because we only bought the house with the intention of remodeling it, because it's a 1955 original. Nobody had ever touched it until we came along. And it's not, if you've ever lived in the 50s, it's not a great place to live in today's age. And we were told at that time it would be a $400 tap fee to get on the sewer. So when you fast forward, 3 years when we actually start the remodel, and we're being told it's now $100,000, it's quite a bit different between a $400 and $100,000.
Well, the tap fee, when you were told what the tap fee is, you didn't anticipate that to be all of the cost in doing the project, did you?
No, we also knew there'd be some excavation from the house to the edge of it, which would be on our property itself. Where we stand now is we're tearing up 108 feet of Edgewood Drive because we have to go right down the center of the drive of the road. And that's where a lot of this cost is coming from, is tearing up the road to get to do a manhole extension. I think the cost was something like $30,000 in asphalt. Just to put the asphalt back was $30,000.
But that's no different now than when you bought it 4 years ago.
That is different, yes.
Why is it different?
What they told us at that time is that was our connection point, and it's no longer the connection point. We now have to create a sewer main extension.
And who's the they you're talking about?
Somebody at the Public Works office, when we called down and talked to the city before we bought the place. We don't have a name. I don't have a name. It was 4+ years ago. So I'm not exactly sure who we talked to, but we were under the understanding or the impression that we just had to dig from our house, or our sewer line exits the house, to the center of the road and tap in, pay the tap fee, and get on city sewer. And that's nowhere near the extent of what we're talking. And then at the time when we had talked to Mike Wilkening at the city and came up with the plan with KTM, the city bid sheet showed this project should cost about $20,000 to $26,000, and we're getting bids for $100,000. So it doesn't even match the city bid sheets for whatever purpose.
But we don't have any control over what contractors
Correct.
bid for their prices.
Correct.
That would be illegal if we controlled what they bid. So
Right, we were just going off of when the city provided us information, that's what we were basing it on. At $26,000, at this stage, it's a bargain, which it's not $26,000. When you're talking 6 figures to connect to sewer, I think it's a bit exorbitant for anybody sitting in this room.
I agree. But in the beginning, you knew you had to connect to sewer
Correct.
as well. Okay. I
Yes.
would hope you guys could connect and they could assist you, because we have very good people in that department in the city. And I'm sure a discussion would be very worthwhile to help get something figured out. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, go ahead.
Well, okay, you guys, before you leave, That's the house, Joe Vallette's house, right? About, okay, now I was wrong, because I know exactly the house. And the way it sits on that street, and you look across all the houses that were built throughout the 80s and early 90s, you would think it would be a straight shot down to the highway to hook up to a sewer. It's not one of these very odd things, because literally, the other side of that street was all built since 1980 and 85.
They
So
ran
I
the
think
sewer
we
through
need
the
to explore
backyards.
it. So-
The sewer runs through the backyards of that house. It doesn't
Okay.
run in the street. And that's where some of because the sewer is between those two rows of houses and not out front.
That's a
so
very
it-
weird exception there,
it is.
isn't it? We
And
need
it-
Is
to
it 601 South Berry Pine?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah. And so
I
it
just
pops up
wanted, I just
eventually.
wanted to say this, because a lot of times we get people wanting these exceptions because they buy things and they do things, and you look at it, it's like, why in the heck would you think that's even possible? Now, I could see where you guys in the first place might be a little bit misled just by looking at it, because I would have assumed that that sewer ran right down the street like it does a block away where I grew up.
Correct.
So, anyhow, I think we need to explore options a little bit and see if we can come up with something that's a little more reasonable. And
Yeah, I appreciate that. And I think one of the concerns is I feel that because part of the city infrastructure is lacking, which is why we're having to put the additional manhole in. So then when we're in the meeting and we're told, well, you only have to pay to put it in, we'll pay to maintain it, doesn't help us right here with the costs, so.
Well, this is not on today's agenda, right? So
No.
we
Yeah,
need to
yeah.
discuss this, and we'll, get back with you, I'm sure. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Vicki, it looked like you had something you wanted to.
I just wanted to clarify for the committee that the requirement to connect to city sewer at this point is a state requirement. It's not a city requirement. That comes from the South Dakota Department of Agricultural and Natural Resources. Similar to anyone in our community that has a failed sewer line, there's expenses for that property owner to reestablish by today's standards what that service connection is going to be. And we don't have the funds available to assist with each and every one of those either. I think the real question and area that maybe Ben and his team can visit with these property owners is in regards to whether or not and why there needs to be an extension of the sewer main and or a new manhole. There could be a multitude of reasons why that's required. And I think once we get that resolved, it's going to fall into place what the city's obligation should be on this one.
Thank you so much. And one of the things that I wanted to bring up too, you guys said that putting in this extension, that would allow some of the other possible homeowners to tap into the line. And I think that the city should also look into that, because if they're putting the infrastructure in for their neighbors, there probably should be some kind of a tap fee, or there should be something involved in it. So we are spreading out the cost if this is something that needs to be done. So I'll leave it there, and we will move on to public comment. So I will close general public comment, and we will move on to just regular public comment, items 1 through 25. And I don't have anything for items 1 through 25, so I will close that. Then we'll move on to 27, okay. Yeah, I do have 26 and 27, but nothing on consent items 1 through 25. So we will move on to the consent items 1 through 25, and I will turn it over to staff to make comments.
Thank you, Alderman. Item 19, I would request to be pulled. We have a correction or a modification that needs to happen on item 19. The rest of the items, we're going to tag team, Ben and myself. I will address items 2 through 9 and items 18, 19, and 20. Item number 2 is a permit modification for the landfill. Last meeting, there was another permit modification for a new candlestick flare. This is a modification to allow us to use the existing flare in a new or at a higher flow rate. Just a minor tweak, but it does require us to send in a modification of the permit to the state. Next item is the annual report for the landfill, and this requires mayoral signature to submit to the state. It's a routine business as far as our annual reporting goes. The same with item 4, which is the annual compliance certification report that requires mayoral signature. The next item is an FTA, kind of a normal revenue source for transit. Every year, we get a matching grant through the Federal Transit Authority, and last year we didn't do it because of the COVID and the CARES Act. So other than last year, this is an annual event. Megan is here if there are questions regarding that. The next item on the agenda would be item 6, and this is an annual agreement for monitoring out at the solid waste landfill. And this is the 5th year of a 5-year contract with AET to do that monitoring and compliance. Item 7 is a professional service agreement with Albertson Engineering for the parking ramp maintenance project. This would be the design and CA contract. Again, Rod Johnson is here if there are further questions regarding that project. Item 8 is an amendment with HDR Engineering for the WRF Aeration South Plant Expansion Project. This is the next step as we proceed towards the new plant at the water rec facility. Item 9 is an amendment with Advanced Engineering and Environmental, AE2S, and this has to do with, this was a very good project. We had an arc flash analysis done on all our water facilities, which is a safety risk assessment, and they were efficient on the project to the tune of about a savings of $43,000. We had another scope item we had originally wanted to do, which was the review of the Public Works Electrical Safety Manual, but for cost purposes, we excluded it. With the savings that was realized with the project of the $43,000, we are now able to do the Electrical Safety Manual review, update, and comments for an amendment of, I believe it's $16,000 for that item. Item 18 is a vehicle purchase for the Water Division. It is 2 new Ford Explorers. Item 19, when we will pull that, I can visit with that later with it being pulled. And then item 20 is an annual deal where we are purchasing additional garbage and recycling containers for the solid waste facility as part of our replacement inventory. Thank you.
And do we have any comments or questions from anyone on the dais or Laura?
No, sir.
If not, I would look for a motion to approve items 1 through 20. Let's do that this way, and then we'll come back to Park and Rec. Look for a motion for items 1 through 20 minus 19. We're going to pull 19. Oh, yeah, that's right. I'm sorry. I'm trying to hurry this because I've got to leave. So I'm going to turn it over to Greg, and I'm going to go. So Greg's going to be your chairman.
So do we have a motion on the ones that weren't addressed, or are we just going to wait and go ahead and address those?
What's that?
No, we're fine.
Okay.
So moved.
Which ones need to be addressed yet? 11 through 17. Okay. Ben, are you going to handle those?
I could speak to items 10 through 17, 26, and 27, if you guys want to still go through that.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay. Item number 10 is an agreement between the City of Rapid City and the USGS for water resources investigation. This is something that we pursue annually with partnering with USGS that gives us information that we use to make a lot of our decisions concerning floodplain and other various things. Number 11 is an agreement for utility relocation for our Deadwood Avenue reconstruction project going on north of I-90. Number 12 is an amendment to our agreement with Ferber Engineering for the DOT's Omaha Street reconstruction project. I'm sure everyone's aware that that project is still ongoing, and so as such, with them going beyond completion date, we have added expense with that as well. And it's for CA services for the construction. 13 is just a progress change order for one of our CIPs. 14 through 16 is advertising staff to authorize for bids for 3 of our CIPs. And then 17 is the same thing as what Stacy was talking about, buying 2 vehicles for engineering services, 2 Ford Explorers for our additional needs. I can talk about 25 or 26 and 27 when we get to those, if we want to.
We'll hold off on those. Thanks. Yeah, does anybody have any of those from 2 through 20 they have questions? I have one question, so I'll wait. Okay, Ben, on number 15, the Sunburst Drive reconstruction. So I was contacted by some constituents about this. I went out and looked at the plan as it was probably a month ago, but it's been revised now, is that correct?
We had a public meeting where all the landowners came here just on Monday, I believe. But, no, last week. And we were able to work out some proposed solutions at the end of between 2 of the property owners there for some of the street needs. And so we are revising some of those things right now, Greg. Yeah.
Okay, so is this plan that you have in 15, does that incorporate those, the results of that meeting you had with the property owners?
We don't necessarily anticipate additional costs with these improvements that we're talking about. That was one of the things that we made clear to the landowners, that the city can't incur additional costs for these improvements that you're talking about. If there's no additional cost to the city, then we are more than open to considering what those improvements might look like, but at no additional cost to the city. So
what was your impression that they left the meeting satisfied with your plan?
I thought the meeting went extremely well, and I was happy that we did this and that it was a good time for us to communicate and for all the parties that are invested in that to be together at the same time. We were able to come to a good solution, I believe.
Okay. Any other questions from anyone on 2 through 20?
Well, I'm just curious about when we rebuild these streets in neighborhoods like this that are, semi-rural, what's like the cost per mile as compared with repaving a street on downtown St. Charles Street, for instance? I mean, is it really, really more expensive to do that per, mile? And I just look at the efficiency of the density of population, and I'm wondering if there's some way that people who choose a lifestyle to live like that, I mean, it seems to me we provide them a benefit for that lifestyle because it's really expensive to maintain those outlying areas and stuff. What's it cost to do that in that area?
Well, I think your question is the per mile cost of a rural section versus an urban section. And so, yes, the per mile cost of a rural section, no curb and gutter or any other additional drainage that is required or grading that is required for that, it's going to be much cheaper to do a rural section than an urban section. But I think another part that you're referring to is also like you said, the density of the population is out there. So, yeah, as far as bang for your buck per citizen, I suppose, is that kind of what you're getting at, Bill? Yeah.
Let's face it, lack of density it causes a problem because all of that requires more money to maintain over the life thing, and I'm just wondering if we had some sort of formula that when you choose to live out there, I mean, let's face it, the people living in the highly densely populated part of town end up paying for the roads out there, and they don't get any benefit for that. And I wonder if we had some kind of formula that accommodated that in such a way. I don't know. I think Vicky knows what I'm trying to say. It's just that it's a benefit. They build it once, but then everybody maintains it forever, and it's a high-cost maintenance. So this is the argument for population density. And I'm just asking that. You probably can't answer it now, but it's something we may need to look at.
Sure. I think what we looked at on this is just more so, one of the drivers on this is it's a source protection area. And so we needed to install sewer in this area in order to get some of this stuff out of these source protection areas where our water quality needed to be prioritized. As part of that, there's a lot of, the road was in very, very, very bad shape in that area. And so all the utility needs and the road needs were lining up to form an efficient project in that way. But as far as formula for those types of things, I'm not aware of anything, but there could be something more that we could get back to you on.
Go to Pat Jones.
Thank you very much, Mr. Stroman. Mr. Evans, am I to understand that you're suggesting that if it's a road that is an area where there's fewer people, that we shouldn't build it to the current standards that we build our roads with curb and gutter and all of this? I've always been under the impression that if it's within the city limits or our 3-mile boundary, there are rules and regulations that we have to follow when we build things. I'm concerned about, if I understand your statement correctly, I would be very, very hesitant, concerned, scared, not wanting to do it if we look at, well, there's only this many people that live out here, and even though it's in the city limits, you only get this good of a road. But if you live in here, you get a better road. If I'm off base, please clear me up. But I need some clarification on where you're trying to go. Because we talk all the time about things not being built up to code, and this wasn't up to code this time, this wasn't done up to code this time. We're trying to clean up these messes. People following the rules about driveways and sidewalks and sewer and water and all of this, and to hear it come from the dais that we should consider toning down the quality of the road because it's the road less traveled is confusing to me. So I need you to explain that to me, please, Mr. Chair, if we may.
You are confused because I don't believe I said the word quality of construction ever. I don't know where that came from. I'm talking about the cost of maintaining long expanses of highway in these less densely populated areas. And I'm just saying that perhaps the funding mechanism needs to be tweaked so that, let's face it, for every time you refinish the road out there, perhaps we could be refinishing more places in your neighborhood. It just costs a lot in these rural areas, whether it's an extension of a sewer or an extension of a water line, to maintain that. I mean, it just does, because they're not as close together. So I guess it's the cost per citizen, maybe is the way we need to put it. Maybe it's something we need to look at. People that want to live that lifestyle choice, I get that. It's more expensive. They pay more in the first place, perhaps. But it's also expensive for the city to maintain once it is. So that's just, I think, something we need to look at. So.
I don't know where this is, but is this Sunburst Drive, is this in the city limits? So it's within the boundaries of what we have to do as far as making roads, whether they're urban or rural? Is that correct? Maybe, can Ben respond?
Yeah, sure.
Thank you, Chair.
No, I think really what we try to do within the city is use all of the available tools we have to have a successful project. And we have tools available for us to have urban sections with curb and gutter and rural sections that are not curb and gutter that fit these neighborhoods in doing a successful project that meets our standards based off of where their project is at. So I don't think Bill's going down the road of trying to say we do less. It's just we do try to fit the city's requirements into the neighborhood of where we're working. And we really want to try to maintain that as much as possible. So we wouldn't sacrifice any type of quality or anything like that for where we work. We just have a multitude of tools that we can use to make these improvements as safe and, you know, progress them as much as we possibly can to the city standards.
Okay, and I would just point out that, to me, this isn't really a rural area. I understand that Mr. Evans is talking in more general terms, but, and this is a pretty good price tag, but from looking at the street out there, I don't think anything's ever been done to the streets out there once they were put down in whenever. And this project also includes not just the street pavement, but water main replacement, sanitary sewer installation, culverts to facilitate drainage. There's a lot to this project, and it is not a huge stretch of road, that's for sure, but it is something that badly needs to be reconstructed. So any other comments on 2 through 20?
Well, one more comment as to why I brought this up. Okay, we just heard from landowners or property owners on Berry Pine Road, developed neighborhood, been there since 1955. I know our folks, we moved in 1960. They're being asked to do this gigantic reconstruction at their own expense because it's not part of the plan. Now, there's probably 7 or 8 more homes along that, maybe more, because I'm only thinking South Berry Pine, that are going to eventually need those things because they're probably all on septic now that it's brought up. And we need to find some cost-sharing mechanism for them because they're all going to have the same problem this homeowner has. Now, in the other case, we have a later development up there that's going to get new water, sewer, and everything. And I just see a little discrepancy there in how these things get paid for. And so that's the only reason I brought it up. It's not going to be pertinent today, what we pass. But we need to look at some of these policies because they seem to nail some people and other people don't have any issues. And I think it's pretty obvious, anybody looking at this, that the people that spoke, they've got a big problem because they're not getting any help from the city. And yet this other reconstruction's happening, getting help from the city. And so I just think we need to look at some of these policies because they seem to unfairly almost punish some people through no fault of their own. Okay, so as far as today, it doesn't really matter, but I think we need to address these and talk about them in the future. In particular, the same thing's coming up here with this, what is it, number 26, because we have some people that are on septic. City wants them to be on sewer. I'm sure there may be other people that are going to be needing to be put on sewer in the future. Should that one person bear the cost of that sewer line when there's going to be other people in the future that are going to need it? And I've talked about this for over 2 years about the way the infrastructure is built, and I think it's backwards. And I think the city needs to control where the infrastructure is built and then charge people to hook up to it. And so we don't seem to have gotten anywhere in the last 2.5 years, but perhaps that's coming. And we've talked about that in the past. I know I talked with Vicki, talked with you. So that's the only reason I'm even bringing these up today. Okay, thank you.
Okay, still waiting for a motion on 2 through 20.
Move approval?
Okay. Okay. Moved by Jones, second by Evans. Were we taking 19 out, though?
Yes.
Okay. With the exception of 19, which is being continued. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. We'll go on to number 21. Items from Parks and Recs, Mr. Biegler.
Mr.
21.
Chair, could we go back to 19 and allow Stacy to explain that one so you folks can act on it before we go on?
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Am I good to go?
Yep. Go ahead.
Okay. Item 19, we don't want to continue. I just asked to have it pulled. I would like the title on the agenda item to reflect that where it says bid contract 17,620 in the amount of $32,047. We actually have a updated contract amount on that to be $29,452. So the title in this needs to reflect that the price is $29,452, and then in any place else where that price is reflected in this agenda item, it should reflect $29,452. If that correction is made, we would recommend approval for this item.
We've got a motion to amend the price to $29,452 and a second. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay. So, motion passes. So now can I hear a motion on item 17 with the amended amount? Excuse me, 19? Yeah. Yeah, number 19? Okay. Okay, we'll vote on the motion on 19. All in favor? Aye. Aye. Okay, all against? Motion carries. Now, I think we're done with 2 through 20. And we'll go on to number 21, to Parks and Recs.
All right, thank you very
Bigler,
much. Items 21 and 22 are equipment purchases for our park maintenance division. 21 is a slow-speed stump cutter attachment for a skid steer, and 22 is a mini excavator. Item 23 is seeking authorization for us to go out to bid for our Dinosaur Park Accessibility Improvement Project. That is a project that will provide universal access from the roadway at Skyline Drive all the way up to the top of the hill of the Dinosaur Park. It'll also include some other safety features, railings, lighting, that sort of thing. So this is a project that we've been planning for quite some time now, and we are raring to go and get this work done. If approved and we go out to bid, we hope to have the project wrapped up by Memorial Day of 23. So this is a project that'll happen starting later this summer, go through the winter, and be completed in the spring.
Thank you, Mr. Biegler. Any discussion from council?
Yeah, I buzzed in.
Okay, we'll go to Pat Jones.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you very much, Mr. Biegler. I'd like to move to approve 21, 22, 23, and keep the floor, if I can get a second.
Second?
Oh, yeah, second.
Okay,
Thank you.
moved and seconded. We'll go to Pat Jones.
Thank you very much. Item number 23 is very, very exciting. It's been getting some great news coverage on TV and in the newspapers, and this is a very exciting time that we're moving forward with accessibility programs throughout Rapid City. Just over the last weekend, the Mayor's Committee on People with Disabilities and the Accessibility Group had a tremendous event downtown at Main Street Square called an All Ability Skate. And they were able to get items to help people who are on crutches or wheelchairs or other physical handicaps to be able to get out on the ice and skate. And Councilman Armstrong was very, very active in making that happen, and we offer great thanks to her and the whole committee. It was a great pleasure for me to be down there, and it just underscores how we're waking up in Rapid City to the need to make sure accessibility matters to all of our residents. One of the things we talked about down there was not all disabilities are visible. So not everyone who has a disability uses crutches or uses a walker, or maybe some do, or a wheelchair. But the key thing is to think about accessibility and acceptance of people in these areas. Mr. Biegler and I have talked about picnic tables, making picnic tables more accessible, and I'm just so proud of his openness to looking at these things. This Dinosaur Park plan is a great example of that, and it's just going to be fantastic to make this area more accessible to young people, to old people, to old former band directors who use walkers, just anybody who wants to go up there. It's going to be wonderful. And so I am appreciative of the engineer. I can't remember her name, Mr. Biegler.
Yeah, Melissa Peterson.
Yes, Melissa Peterson, who's done tremendous work on this, and I'm excited to see it move forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Evans?
Thank you. Mr. Biegler, does this address that issue of where we step directly from the walkway right into the highway, is there some kind of a bridge that goes across now or something that keeps people from having to cross that roadway? From the time I was a kid, I've wondered why we haven't had a bunch of people run over right there, and I'm wondering, it would have been such an easy solution to cross that into some kind of elevated walkway or something that would maybe, act like a gateway. They're welcome to Dinosaur Park or something. How are we solving that problem?
We won't be putting a walkway over Skyline, but the area at the bottom of the stairs that right now kind of just dumps out right almost into Skyline Drive, there will be a staging area there that people will have the ability to congregate there either before they go up or after they come down. So that will keep them from walking directly into traffic. So that we've addressed it in that way. We're still going to have one route of the stairs going up. We'll also have the gentle ramp area that will take off to the right of that area. So there will be a staging area there at the base of both of those routes to keep people from running or walking into the roadway.
Well, Personally, I would have preferred exploring the option of never having people cross that road, and that could have also perhaps included an elevator or lift on the other side that would have raised people up halfway up the hillside anyhow. But I'm curious as to what's happening to all that old WPA rock work, and is it going to be preserved? Is it going to be destroyed? Because a lot of that's very historical stuff.
Much of it will be preserved. Some of that will be removed, and I know that the stairs themselves that are there are completely out of compliance. The run and rise of every single step is different. So those stairs will be redone, and we will be trying to reuse as much of the stone that's out there at various points of the project. But we are going to be sensitive to the historic nature, and actually the sculptures themselves are the only things that are on the historic register, not the entire site or the walls or anything like that. But in any regard, our architects are working with the folks of the State Historical Preservation Committee, as well as local historic preservation folks, to make sure that we're not going to be fooling around with the historical nature of the site.
Well, I'm glad to hear that because, Canyon Lake Park's sort of the last remaining big accumulation of those kind of projects that we have in town. And those of us who grew up here remember when East Boulevard was lined with canals and rock work, and it was quite beautiful. And it's all been destroyed, and frankly, I think it's much less wonderful than it was when I was a kid. So anything we can preserve and augment and build in the same style so it looks original is really, really important at this stage of the game. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, if I may?
Sure.
The role that the South Dakota School of Mines played in that project when it was first done, the Works Progress Administration, there you go, there's a great American history term. Anyone know what the Works Progress Administration is? Played a vital role. So yeah, every one of those rocks up there is a vital part of history, and I knew that there was going to be preserved well, and I'm glad you asked, Mr. Evans, because I know you have a keen eye towards those things. So it's going to be very exciting, and I appreciate the respect they're showing to the history of that project.
Thank you. I just have a question, Jeff. So how are you going to, I've seen the newscasts too about this renovation that's going to take place up there, and it is very exciting. I agree with Alderman Jones, but how are you going to make it more accessible to people in wheelchairs and so forth?
We will be constructing a pathway that will, rather than go straight up, will be circuitous and be at the proper grade to allow people with strollers and wheelchairs and just people who can't climb the stairs to have a nice gentle pathway to get up to each of the dinosaurs and eventually up to the very top.
Okay, thank you. So we've already had a motion and a second on 21 through 23, so all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Motion carries. On to number 24, community development.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Item number 24 is the vacation of a portion of a section line highway. This is property that is owned by the Zanstras, and it's out in an area that you may know as Elk Country Estates, Elk Crossing. As a part of vacating this right-of-way, you will then see a proposed plat that will create additional residential lots in this area, which will truly be an extension of what we see today. And going back to some of the prior discussions that you've had at today's meeting, this is a prime example of promoting infill development. This is an area that was annexed in. There was no infrastructure at that time, unlike the prior one on Sunburst, where it was annexed in and the road systems were in place. So as a part of this, we are promoting, by the vacation of this right-of-way, for this developer to use property already in the city limits with water and sewer available to this area to add additional density that does go towards the overall cost and maintenance when the city has to own and accept these public utilities. The larger number of lots we have in an area, the more we get in revenue to help cover those maintenance expenditures. I just kind of wanted to bring that conversation full circle. These are the things that you folks do every day to promote infill development that in the long run assists all the taxpayers of Rapid City. So we do ask that you support this when you have it go forward to council. Thank you.
Any comments on 24? Been moved and seconded to approve item 24. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. On to number 25. From the mayor's office, who's going to be addressing that?
Madam Chair, or Mr. Chair, I will just say that this is a commission that's under the direction of our department, and we are certainly in support of this individual being appointed to the Historic Preservation Committee. Look forward to working with them as items get brought forward for historic review. We would ask that you recommend to approve this appointment.
Okay. Motion moved by Evans, second by Jones to approve. Any other discussion? All in favor? Aye. All opposed? Same sign. Motion carries. And that will be the end of the consent calendar. And now we're going on to non-consent items, 26 and 27. We have some speaker request forms. And I'm going to open public comment on number 26 for Ron Davis.
I'm Ron Davis, Davis Engineering. We requested an exception. My client owns a fairly large lot out there, and he wants to split it into two lots and build one more house as his retirement home. And of course, I think Bill brought it up earlier, the people that were here earlier, we're going to put 110 feet of sewer in at $100,000. We got about 500 feet that has to go in, which will stop the building of a new home on that lot. So we were requesting exception to not have to put sewer in and use septic tank and drain field on this property. The lot is large enough that we can put two drain fields in and we can alternate flows back and forth, which would impact it a lot, I think so. Anyway, and we requested that and we were denied, so I'm just back here asking again one more time if we could get that approved.
Any discussion from council? Bill?
Thank you, Mr. Stroman. From what I understand, this is a very contentious issue because it's right in the middle of the watershed, right where we collect from for the public waterworks. And the policy is not to allow septic systems within a certain, area of that. So I don't know if we're all prepared to honestly vote on this today without more discussion, because I'd have to vote no based upon what our engineers are saying, but I don't know if there would be any other options, because I'm telling you, it's the same thing here. Most likely there's going to be more people wanting to build. Perhaps we could find a sharing thing where we come up with to allow the cost of this infrastructure to be spread out over the future development. So that's, I've been consistent for some years on this about forcing the first person in to pay all the costs and everybody else attaches themselves and, kind of lives off the wealth of the first person. So this whole policy we have is, we need to figure out a way that we can avoid this happening. So today, I'm probably going to have to vote against it because I just think it's detrimental to the city waterworks, and everybody I've talked to says they're pretty much unanimous on that. So I don't know. Mr. Jones, have you explored this at all?
Well, we're just taking public comment right now, so I will save my comments till we vote.
Did we hear from engineering on it? Ben, please.
Yeah, we certainly understand the landowner's, situation here. We really do. We talked about this for a long time, back and forth, and we landed on that it being in a source water protection area, and the soil conditions being rocky as they are, it had to be denied for those two reasons. To maintain the quality of our water was paramount for everything. I do believe that it's a lot to ask, 500 feet to put in sewer, but some area, like you were talking before, Bill, some areas just cost a lot to develop. This is one of those areas we feel is as such. And if we say this to this one landowner in this area, what's to stop that from continuing on up Nameless Cavern Road? We went back and forth on this. It really was a tough decision, but it was, the water quality had to be, held first and foremost.
For Ms. Fisher concerning this. So, Ms. Fisher, do you think part of these problems come up because of the way we developed, and we've talked about the difference between what we do and what Sioux Falls or other communities do. Now, if we had some different policies in place, could these issues be avoided, either through restriction of where development's going to take place, and the people owning the land know for sure this isn't going to happen before they try to, bet their lifelong dream on it? Or how could it possibly work in another way so we don't have these situations that make one landowner's dream prohibitive and then other people follow, like I said, living off the wealth of the other person. So are there policy changes we could adopt? Because I know other cities may not do it the same way. Am I correct?
Mr. Chair, you are absolutely correct. And the issue before us today is we have a plat where they are increasing density, and our requirement is that you meet urban design standards as a part of that in a rural area. So right there is a contradiction. We are requesting a costly improvement that would be expected and absorbed if it were within the city limits of Rapid City. In some counties within South Dakota and in many other states, there are requirements set forth primarily in state law that say that you can only plat outside of a municipality's jurisdiction if you are adjacent to that municipality and you annex in, and there's always then the expectation that you be developed to urbanized standards. We have a 3-mile platting jurisdiction around Rapid City. Some of it, known as the Valley, does have urbanized design standards. It's expected. But there are many, many of these plats that come before you that are somewhat remote, that luckily enough, there is a system in place. It's not the city's system, but there is a system in place that will allow for a connection to a utility source. I'm glad that Ben mentioned the water quality. It wasn't that many years ago where we didn't recommend to allow a plat if it were less than 10 acres in size over this aquifer, because we didn't have the ability to have community sewer. And it is so important that we safeguard that drinking water source, and this is over that aquifer that feeds into that. So just a little history on, we have loosened that standard up, where we're not prohibiting platting in increments less than 10 acres anymore. But it will always be a challenge for you and for this developer, because we are in a rural area with urban design standards.
Okay, is there any more discussion? The item before us is number 26, which is a request from John Eisinger to appeal the denial of exception 21.
You got to take all on 26 and 27.
At the same time?
Yeah.
Okay. We'll go to, okay. I guess I've been corrected on a point of order. So we'll go on to number 27. And we have public comment on 27. Jennifer Landgett.
If it pleases the commission, my name's Cale McNamara, and I'm the engineer. Jennifer would like me to speak before she takes the opportunity to speak. So it's Cale McNamara, Long Branch Civil Engineering, 1220 East Minnesota Street. I represent the petitioner in this matter. I would like to try to fire up the overhead so we can just kind of put a little bit of background to this. Can we zoom out on that? Gotcha. So, background-wise, what we're talking about is, this is Golden Eagle Drive. This would be Catron Boulevard, and this is Bellagio Lane. What we're looking at is trying to plat a lot that lies south of the intersection of Bellagio Lane and Vineyard, and Golden Eagle, excuse me. We're trying to plat this lot here. That's an unplatted balance right now. So it's a remnant of what a parent parcel. It had some right-of-way taken out of it, some other things were platted out of it. The idea is to consolidate this into one lot so that it's transferable. It's not transferable now, of course, because it's a remnant property. The area that we're discussing to try to obtain an exception to not construct is this piece of right-of-way right here. Now, it's constructed to this point. The owners, who will speak here shortly, they constructed that portion of it, and we're looking for to get a variance not to construct this portion of it. And there's a reason that we are kind of going down this path. It's a path that I've been down before on this very same piece of right-of-way. We platted these lots, which is the Bellagio Subdivision. During the course of platting this lot, we sought to not improve this piece of Golden Eagle Drive. That was granted with the platting of these lots. Now, of interest, and the reason that we sought this exception before and it ultimately was granted, was you look at the grade, and I will pull up a separate exhibit here in a second, which is going to better explain that, but if you look at this grade where the road ends, that is the 35 contour. Right down here, where the road would have to end at, that is the 20 contour. And that is in 120 feet. That's dropping 15 feet and 120 feet. The city's criteria manual tells me that within 50 feet of that intersection, I could go max slope of 5%. Then we could go through a vertical curve and get this thing down, but I intuitively know that I'm not going to get down more than maybe 7 feet to the end of this right-of-way, below that 35. So let's call it 28. That tells me this end of this road is going to be sitting on approximately 10 foot of fill. If you think about dozing 10 foot of fill out over the end of this right-of-way, and let's just say we took it to that point, and we dozed 10 foot of fill out over the top of it. Now I'm 75 feet above the elevation at Catron Boulevard, so we can't make that connection. And I would need to go 10 feet past the end of the right-of-way to stub out the sewer. That tells me I got to get 10 foot of fill and get down to catch at the property line, because I can't grade over the property line. The DOT owns the drainage improvements in Catron Boulevard. And there's no way the DOT is going to let us take out their drainage improvements. They're culverts and they're there for a reason. That means they got to catch at the property line from here to here. And just to keep the math really easy, I've just indicated that we can't get to existing grade. We're going to be on 10 feet of fill, but just to make the math really easy, let's just say that we could get down to 25. And we could catch at the edge of the Ham property over here. We'd need a huge easement, and this would be a giant fill slope. The math tells me that I got to drop 75 feet, that's that red line, in 190 feet. That's a 40% slope. It's about 2.5 to 1. Now, 4 to 1 is an ideal slope. 3 to 1 can be granted if it's armored. This would be steeper than a 3 to 1 slope to get down there. To make it a 4 to 1 slope and build this road, I would have to go into the DOT ditch and obliterate some of their drainage improvements to make the fill slope 3 to 1. It gets significantly worse if we go to a 4 to 1 slope. We'd be right up against the lanes on Catron Boulevard, filling this in. The concern is, this is a 40% slope. The maximum driveway per the Rapid City Criteria Manual is 15%. So how do we accommodate a 15% driveway off of a road that's over 40% fall down to Catron Boulevard? That's why the exception to not construct a portion of Golden Eagle Drive has been granted in the past, and we are asking that it be granted now as well. And I believe with that, the owners would like to add some additional comment, and if you have any concerns or comments for me, I'd be happy to answer them.
But I'm understanding. Okay. Hold on a second, sir, before Jennifer comes up. We got a question from Mr. Jones for you.
Thank you, Mr. Stroman. Sir, is the part that you're not wanting to build on or to extend the road the area that's in the orange rectangle here?
Yeah, it's the yellow inside the orange rectangle. That's the edge of the right-of-way. I'm sorry if I didn't point it out correctly, but this is the neighbor's property, annotated in blue. We're looking not to construct this piece. It's about 120 feet.
So what is that right now?
It is vacant. The right-of-way, the road is built to this point right now to city standard.
So Golden Eagle Drive ends right where you just drew?
Golden Eagle Drive ends at that location.
Okay. So how will people need to get to their homes or anything? How will they get there without a road?
Yeah, so once this gets platted into a lot, any subdivision of it would require access, driveway access back to Golden Eagle Drive for this parcel once it's transferred. This parcel already has a driveway, which comes out to Bellagio. This parcel does not, it still would have driveway access because it has right-of-way. It's not landlocked. That right-of-way is dedicated as of record. I'm just saying that if you wanted to build out here on this 2-to-1 slope or you thought it was physically possible to build on a 2-to-1 slope, then you would have to build a driveway back up through here. That driveway could be done at 15% versus the 5% that's required of a road.
So the area then below, if I may, the bottom orange line, is that just going to be one lot?
Oh, this thing?
No, below the bottom orange line?
This parcel?
Yes.
Well, my client is platting it into one lot so they can facilitate a sale of it. Now, they're not involved in subdivision of this property. They want to plat it into a lot so they can transfer the title of it.
But it could be subdivided.
Absolutely.
And then those people, would they then be coming into whoever's sitting up here and saying, well, we don't have any access to a road because you people didn't have them build a road?
Oh, well, no. Subdivision If I came in and tried to plat this lot, I would be right back to preliminary subdivision plan and another staff report. So it's not as if this is the only bite at the apple. This is the first bite at the apple. Any subdivision of this thing, I'm going to be right back here again talking about exceptions to not construct that right away. I believe Ms. Fisher could back that up as well.
Yeah, is this a time we could ask Ms. Fisher her take on the thing? I mean, this goes back to exactly what I was talking about, this lack of consensus planning with the city really controlling, because this appears to be a stump that goes to nowhere that perhaps could have been avoided with better kind of regional planning around there. Could you explain your take on why it's denied?
Mr. Chair, Cale, could you zoom out on this so that we can see Arlene Ham's property adjacent to the west? I actually remember when Jennifer came in originally with Bellagio, and they did get a variance to not waive this part of it. At that time, they didn't own the property to the south, and it was anticipated that when it was platted, we could then go back and have a discussion. So we never anticipate that there would be a street connection to Catron Boulevard. That grade is too steep. We're all on board with that. But what we do see is that that could be a street connection to Arlene Ham's property to the west. What that looks like, we don't know. We don't know what that master plan's going to be, but as a part of subdividing, it's required that you build access to your lot lines so that your neighbor can have that connectivity if needed for their design plans too. We don't know what kind of fill and grading is going to take place, but we've seen similar situations such as this, where I think Public Works is being consistent, where they supported it once, the variance was granted. If we don't get it then, and if a future developer comes in, they're going to be before you saying, well, you waived it twice, why are we having to do it now? So it's a valid question. I think Cale makes a wonderful argument about the grade being an issue. But we have found that with enough fill and or moving of dirt, we can get connections in some very challenging locations. In addition, it requires that utilities be extended to that lot line as well. And this is just a consistent requirement of anyone. You subdivide, you bring streets and utilities to the end of your project.
So I understand, for instance, that stump there could veer to the northwest and make these lots totally, so it's not really a road to nowhere, because it could possibly be extended in another direction and then be developed. Is this correct?
Correct.
All right, so, okay, thanks.
Go ahead, Cale.
Yeah, if you don't mind, I'd like to jump in on that one. So if what we're discussing is building that scenario, let's just say we're going to start building a road through here on a 2.5 to 1 slope. I mean, I'm not, we put a Rover on Rose, or we put a Rover on Mars. I'm not saying it can't be done, but that'd be a tall undertaking. The city doesn't allow inslopes and outslopes of 1 to 1. And you're talking about cutting a 59-foot right-of-way into a 2 to 1 side slope? I guess I don't see how that's, I don't see how that could be constructed per the city's criteria.
Mr. Chair, again, Cal makes a good point. Our point is still this. It provides access and utilities to that adjacent property. Whether that's for a driveway or for a street connection, we don't know. But the requirement is that you extend those utilities and access points to those adjacent driveways, and that limits the number of approaches then that we'll see along Catron Boulevard as the adjacent property develops.
Okay, thank you. Yep.
Good afternoon. Excuse me. My name is Jennifer Langeth, and I am one of the owners of Bellagio LLC. And if I'm not sure if you know maybe where this is at. This used to be the police officer's party house, up on top of that hill. And so where the road ends, I mean, as Cale knows, I mean, he's gone through all the engineering, it just drops straight down. And this is a really strange parcel of ground, you know, and looking at it with the side slopes and those kind of things in there, I mean, who knows what can be done with the property. But I was in contact with Arlene, and she sent this letter that just says, I own the property with the tax ID 63211, approximately 10.4 acres in Springbrook Acres Subdivision, located 1 north, 7 east, 22 in Pennington County. At this time, I have no plans to develop said property. So she really has no intent to do much with or do anything with this property. And even with the, like Cale said, with the grades to get roads back in there, it's virtually impossible. It's one of those things that my dad would always say, it looks really good on paper, but you get out there and you look at the site and it just doesn't work. Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to close public comment on 26 through 27. And so we'll go to item 26. Request from John Eisinger to appeal the denial of exception 21EX 212. Exception 21EX 212 is to waive the requirement to install sanitary sewer main within Nameless Cave Road right-of-way in conjunction with the proposed subdivision of Lot 2 of Block 1 of Aeration Estates. Pat Jones?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move that we support the recommendation and deny the request.
Second that.
Second.
Okay, we've got a motion to affirm the staff recommendation to deny the request and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor of the motion, say aye. Aye. Opposed? The motion to uphold staff recommendation and deny the request is approved. On to number 27. Request from Cale McNaboe to appeal the denial of exception 21EX 209. Exception 21EX 209 is to waive the requirement to construct Golden Eagle Drive right-of-way in conjunction with the proposed subdivision villas at Bellagio. Staff recommendation was to deny.
I will move to deny this, and then I want to make a comment.
So we have a motion from Evans. Is that to uphold the denial?
Yes.
Okay. Second. And a second by Jones. And we'll go to Bill Evans.
I just want to say that, you know, I'm pretty good about going out and spending time researching these issues. Frankly, I haven't been approached, honestly, to go out and explore. And, you know, as a person who grew up around construction and everything, I understand it's hard to picture for a lot of people in 2D what's happening in 3D. And I don't necessarily disagree with what the people asking for the denial are requesting. I do, in this case, have to support our engineering department and what they're recommending. And perhaps sometime in the future, we can readdress this in some way that we don't keep having these problems. But it always goes back to developer-driven things. And I don't believe that if this is such a problem, the city would have even wanted to develop that particular piece of land. So I just think we really need some policy changes as to how development happens, because if there was a little more regional thinking, a little more consensus with neighbors, a little more planning ahead, we could probably come up with things that make everybody happy. But everybody's going out in lone wolf manner, developing their chunk of the world, and then anybody adjacent to it is like stuck. So I'm going to have to support our staff on this one. Thank you.
Any other discussion? Okay, we've got a motion to affirm the staff recommendation to deny the request. All in favor of that motion, say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. And the motion to affirm staff recommendation denying the request is passed. Bill, second that? Bill? Moved and seconded to adjourn. All in favor, say aye. Aye. We're adjourned.